are you today? Alright, so today we're just gonna be talking about deaf access in society. I put awareness instead of access. Whoops, well I signed that. My bad. We're gonna be talking about deaf access in society. Where it says deaf, obviously I'm saying deaf, DEAAF. This thing sucks. Anyway, I can't even speak. But maybe I'll do another live stream with like guiding you through sources regarding some points on deaf accessibility, perhaps. But that's not what this live stream is. This live stream is just gonna be a little ramble about my thoughts on deaf access. Um, and it's also gonna be like in the description of this video, I have the playlist for Deaf Awareness Month, and in that playlist, I've got in the description all the playlists I've been doing um, on deaf everything. So you can go find all of the sources for things that I'm discussing there. And then maybe one day I'll do like another live stream walking you through those sources regarding deaf access specifically. But today, what I want to talk about is the history that we've been deprived of access, how that impacts limits for access today, um, the differences in different access needs, um, as well as future predictions regarding deaf access. Um, so yeah, that's what we're gonna be working on today. Um, I don't know what happened. I clicked on OBS and then my fucking shit just dropped. Whatever. Alright, so I'm gonna roll my intro and then we're gonna get started. Sorry, I feel like my energy is just off today. Like maybe I shouldn't have done this live stream right now if I feel weird, but maybe it's a good time to be processing shit. I don't know. We'll let that marinate in the future about if this is a good time to do live streams or not. Just reschedule. I don't know. Alright, here we go. Hi, my name is Lexie, aka Deaf Child. I'm born deaf, hard of hearing. My team was one of the top teams between 2020 and 2024 in New Orleans and Louisiana. I began doing business as Deaf Child in 2013, marketing 2011, and sales 2009. I've earned 50 plus certifications in marketing and sales, and I have my Bachelor of Science from Loyola University, New Orleans, with a music industry studies major and a business administration minor. Visit my site at noladeafchild.com. Whoops, wrong button. Alright, I'm so used to going back to sharing a window. So, I want to talk a little bit about how we've been deprived of deaf access for so long. So, as you know, in my opinion, there was no division between deaf and hearing roads before colonialism. That's a colonial concept. Before that, there was speech and sign used intertwined here. So there was no need to have that difference in community because the cultures were all interconnected. Um, and so, in the context of quote unquote America, where deaf people began being deprived of access, first began through native genocide, with deaf native people and all native people, um, having land stolen, being murdered, grotesque things that I don't want to minimize what happened, but I don't want to also be speaking on all of those things either, if that makes sense, at this time. But it's all very important to acknowledge, in my opinion. And so in that context, we had the whitewashing of history as it relates to sign language. When we talk about the formation of sign language, a lot of credit is given to French signs, and then they'll mention local signs too, because they don't want to talk about how American Sign Language is formed off of killing Native people. You know what I'm saying? And this is relevant because this is with deaf access and cultural genocide of sign language. There's two genocides. There's the Native genocide of hand talk. Then we've got the deaf genocide um, that began that I believe began through Native genocide, but there was this, in my opinion, it was like this cultural appropriation of Native signs, and they combined it with other signs and claimed it was a new language. Um, and fucking, and so when you have that type of coming to terms with the whole basis of deaf culture is built on Native genocide in quote unquote America, when we're advocating for deaf access here, we, if we're not advocating for tribal sovereignty and we're not advocating for the restoration of hand talk and acknowledging the roots of where American Sign Language comes from, Native genocide, then we're just also perpetuating that other genocide. You know, so there's a lot of lessons to consider here, how people who are oppressed can still contribute to oppression. So even though deaf community is oppressed, our whole way of deaf access in quote unquote America is based on Native genocide. And this is just a fact. Um, and so we have to contend with that too in our history. And that also lends to why, in my opinion, decolonizing in deaf community is such a struggle, because it's built on colonialism in America. The whole concept is colonial. So how do you decolonize something that's built off of and upholds colonialism, right? And so for me, that you can't talk about decolonizing Native sign without talking about Native genocide and like tribal sovereignty and land back, or you're just whitewashing the deaf cultural history here, in my opinion. Um, and so from there, we go to the Alexander Graham Bell phase, right? Where we've got Alexander Graham Bell advocating for deaf marriage bans, trying to make it so he was part of how we got forced sterilization of deaf people. He was involved in getting sign language banned worldwide and a lot of things like that. Like, I could be going on and on and on. And so, because of all of these issues with deaf access, at that time, deaf people began getting fired, right? Um, Honestly, I feel like this live stream is kind of like a recap of everything I've ever talked about. Uh, but, and so we talked about, like, from there, we've got the dark legal ages of deaf representation, as we've discussed in reading John F. Stanton's Breaking the Sound Barriers. Um, And so when we think about how every step of the way we've had hearing people trying to represent deaf issues when it comes to these things and take away deaf autonomy, what we've then been left with and if you also put into the fact where Alexander Graham Bell was saying we should spread misinformation about the deaf people so it would be harder for them. He said that. It's in his memoir. And so when you reflect on all that and how the misinformation about us continues to perpetuate and how hearing try to still dominate us and any issue about us, any representation for us, that all contributes to our limit for deaf access. When a lot of times when we think of deaf access, we think of how we are limited in our everyday society, such as with dinner table syndrome. Dinner table syndrome is the concept of where deaf people are left out of the conversations, particularly around the dinner table. Um, but we also forget how deaf representation in society is also part of what's missing for deaf access in society. Where hearing people are trying to represent us and misrepresent us. That's where our access then becomes impeded, in my opinion, because if we can't represent ourselves, then we don't have access in society, right? Um, and so from these limits for access in society that have come about, like even though there was the 504 protests and from the 1973 Rehab Act, and even though there was the initial 1990 ADA, there had to be that 2008 update because in 1990 there wasn't a protection, and they were basically like, well, if they didn't believe you were disabled, they didn't have to accommodate you. And so then in 2008 they were like, well, if they can prove it, then theoretically you have to, but there's still like all these loopholes that people use to get around to not accommodate, right? And so there's like all these limits and access needs because even now they're still trying to take away protections in the ADA. Like if you look at what happened with Aixon versus Laufer, wait, I can't fucking finger spell no, that's not right. Laufer. Okay, so fucking that shit. The Supreme Court basically ruled that people with disabilities didn't need to be able to test businesses for if they were accommodating them. And the reason that's important is having the right to test for accommodations under the ADA. In a lot of cases, it's like the main way that we're able to get more accommodations in places because individuals don't have the resources to go do their own lawsuits, for example, right? And so even today, we're constantly getting stripped of deaf access. You look online, like there's all of these stories about bad interpreters who don't know how to sign because they're not properly certified. And fucking a lot of people who claim to be an interpreter, I know more sign language than them, and I'm not fluent. And they think that they're fluent because they infantilize sign language, they infantilize deaf people, they infantilize our ability to comprehend and conversate. Um, and I was raised oralized, and that's another thing with deaf access. Most of us are raised oralized. And a lot of us don't get access because they say, okay, well, if you can speak, that means you have access. And that is not fucking true. Just because you have access to me doesn't mean I have access to you. And then they negate what we need to accommodate ourselves. And yeah, I have a story about that that even happened to me this year from a law firm. And I'm gonna see, I don't know, a law firm, and I'm gonna see if I not a locker, and I'm gonna see if I can talk about that one day. But yeah, fucking, and on that regard, every deaf person has different needs. Um, some deaf, grow up signing, fluent signers. Some deaf, even if they were raised oral, they learn sign language later in life. It's their best language. For me, SimCom is what I prefer. SIMCOMM. SIMCOMM. SimCom. So that's what works for me, but a lot of deaf people don't find that accessible for fluent signers in ASL because there's a different word order and it prioritizes the English word order over the sign language. And so a lot of people, they don't like that. And so I know pigeon sign English or contact sign. PIDGIN, and then signed English. Um, and that's a derivative of ASL. So, fucking, you know what I'm saying? A lot of deaf people have different access needs, and then not all deaf people know ASL. They could be from somewhere else, right? Um, a lot of us though were raised oral, and so we have to speak. That doesn't mean that we have access. A lot of people negate that we're deaf because we can speak. I've had people tell me I'm not deaf because I'm normal. People think that deaf people can't function or something like that, and so then they deny us access from that. You know what I'm saying? Like you did the, ugh, I could go on. Anyway, where's my fucking paper? So we all have different needs. Some deaf people need an interpreter. Some deaf people prefer ASL. Some deaf people are gonna write. A lot of people, when they talk about deaf access, they want to slap a fucking band-aid on it and have one procedure for all deaf people. And different deaf people go to a business or a system or an institution and say, what works for other deaf won't work for me, I need my own access needs, they will try to use the fact that they offer an accommodation to deny you what you need to accommodate yourself. Um, and so that's another thing. That's still discrimination. If you're not actually accommodating an individual deaf person for what they need, you're still discriminating against them. And a lot of people, they don't want to see us as humans with our own needs. They just want us to shut the fuck up and take what they give us, but it doesn't help us. And then they act like we're ungrateful for still needing access, right? Anyway, because I hate institutions. So, when regards of future hopes and future predictions, so my future hope is that we can put more systems in place and have more of these conversations so that way more deaf people have vernacular to advocate for ourselves, has resources to go to, deaf community, no links to pull up to share with people. That's why I do put like all of the links in all the descriptions of my videos. This one wasn't something that I'm like, okay, I got links for this, because I really just wanted to share my thoughts on my issues with deaf access for this video. But I am going to find ways to, in the future, create something to give you with some specific links for deaf access. I'm just not processed that yet to do that for you yet on this specific topic yet. So what I can do for you instead so far is to just tell you to go look at everything I've been trying to process so far. And that is linked in the description of the video through the Deaf Awareness Month playlist. In the description of that playlist, I've got like literally links to all of my deaf playlists in there. And those have sources for every fucking thing. So with the future, right now, in about 10 years, I think we're going to be able to have captioners for sign language just like we do with speech. I don't think it's going to be perfect. It's going to be very fucked up, just like this auto captioner is wrong so much. And I think the sign language is going to be just like that. But here's why I think that's happening. Three things. One, you think about the Xbox Connect, right? Where you move and it traces your movements, and that's how you play the game. Or any other type of virtual reality system, or the types of things we're using with gaming. We know the technology is out there to be able to trace our body movements and create programs for execution of action based on a movement, right? So we know the technology exists. Now it's about creating the context and the understanding for the meaning of the signs, right? Well, two, if you look up Go Sign AI, there's an AI game for sign language. Go check it out. And they talk about how they're developing sign language through artificial intelligence in order to interpret and better and teach you people how to sign, right? Um, and then three, if you think of, I've got my own thoughts on why don't like the sign language gloves for critiques in how hearing people are trying to use them. But the existence of sign language gloves themselves, I'll have to do a whole nother live stream about that. I'm not talking about that right now, or we're gonna get way off track. But the whole existence of sign language gloves themselves fucking showed me that it's capable. The technology's there because it's able to um, detect the movement of your hands and then produce what it thinks the sign is. It shows me that it's all in progress. When you start connecting all of this shit together, in about 10 years, what I predict is more development with sign language in relation to captioning it. And I think they're going to get to where they can start captioning sign language just like you can with speech. I do think, particularly in the first 5 years it comes out, most of it is going to be dead ass wrong, and it will cause some harm at first because a lot of hearing people who don't know shit about sign language are going to be saying the wrong things because of it, or thinking the wrong things are said because of it and not know better, right? But if it develops the way I think it could actually become pretty useful. Um, my hope for the deaf access in society is, like I was saying, more deaf representation. um, I hope, like a lot of things that I'm seeing with hearing people is they keep hiring hearing people to talk about deaf issues. And no, nothing deaf should be promoted to deaf without deaf representation. So I'm so tired of seeing hearing aids used. Like, I had a hearing aid company contact me, a deaf marketing agency. And it was a hearing marketing agency on behalf of this hearing Ireland's Hearing Center contacting me, telling me I need to apply so they can determine whether or not I'm qualified to speak on deaf issues. And these are hearing people trying to tell a deaf person they need to decide if a deaf person's qualified to speak on. You know how fucked up that is? That's like a man asking me if I'm qualified to speak on a period. Like, what? Like, you don't know, they don't know shit about fuck. You know what I'm saying? And that's every aspect of deaf representation. Um, I'm gonna have to do a whole nother, I'm hoping this time I remember to do it, because I didn't realize that, like, the full fucking, like, comments disappear after 60 days. So last time, I saved up all these comments that were held for review, and I never did a video reply on them. But that was what I was gonna do, and that's what I'm gonna do. I try to remember to do this time, and hopefully I don't forget. Um, but one of the comments I currently have held for review is someone basically telling me to the effect of deaf people need hearings input on deaf issues. And I'm just like, no, we fucking don't. Actually, we live under that society, and I'm tired of it. I don't want, this my life is currently that way. That is how society is, and it's fucked up. And I'm telling you, the way to fix it is for deaf representation on deaf issues. And also, if we're advocating for deaf autonomy without advocating for land back and tribal sovereignty, then it's not about deaf autonomy, in my opinion. You can't talk about deaf autonomy and you can't talk about deaf genocide without talking about how deaf culture is built on native genocide. So, in my opinion, any deaf community that is defensive when you start talking about how American Sign Language is built on native genocide are people I don't fucking trust. I'm gonna say that too before I go. Alright, so just to recap, today we've been talking about a lot of things. I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for watching with me. I started this off and I was just like, maybe I'm not in the headspace to do this. Maybe I shouldn't have done this. But honestly, I'm happy with everything I've processed. At this point, I think so far, I feel like this is stuff that I wish past me was better able to articulate to dip bucks in my face. You know what I'm saying? Um, so just to recap the four things we discussed today, we went over our history of deprived access. We talked about limits for access. We talked about how we have different needs, and we talked about my future hopes and predictions for deaf access in society. And so, yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. Like, I really appreciate it that you're here reflecting on me with this shit, because it means a lot to me. Because, like every deaf person, we're not a monolith. We have different needs, different desires, different expectations. So, I know I'm just one perspective, but it means a lot that you're reflecting on my perspective and how I perceive access in deaf society for me. So, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and yeah, bye. Thanks for watching. Join the loyalty program at noladeafchild.com/loyalty and check in during live streams to get points for rewards.